We get our speed from Mom and Dad.
They do stuff super fast. And now they got this new kitchen, so they're even faster. So they can help us with our free throws.
The time-saving Frigidaire Gallery line with a quick preheat and smudge-proof stainless steel that resists fingerprints and cleans easily. It's mealtime in no time, from start to clean. Frigidaire Gallery.
Save more during Frigidaire Gallery bonus days when you buy 3 or more qualifying appliances. See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Hi, I'm John Mallos. Welcome to this live edition of Connect with Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this day. Hey, it's a Wednesday morning. We're talking about sports and a former college basketball star who played for Al McGuire at one time back in the 60s. Remember him, Al McGuire? Hey, he's going to be here in the studio. He'll be talking about his basketball career and also how he's helping young kids here in the Central Valley today. 436-ME-TV, option 11. Call in. Got an open line. Back in a moment.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
Back here on the show on a Wednesday morning on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this day. And my friends, we're going to talk about sports today. Of course, many of you know I have a huge affection for sports. My love for sports, it dates back to my early days, my childhood, when I watched football, baseball, basketball on television, a little black and white screen with my brother and myself watching all those games. At any rate, I want to remind you that you are watching us as usual on Comcast, channel 187, 43.6, 13.1. That's all live. I mean, you're watching this live on those 3 stations now, but then later in the day, you can watch the replay at 2 o'clock, 13.6, and 4.6 over-the-air broadcasting on Biz TV at 8 o'clock at night. And then later on, when you have nothing better to do but twiddle your thumbs, you can check us out or check me out at Twitter at John Mallos, Me TV. All right, to our main topic of the day, and that is basketball, specifically in the world of sports. And today our guest played college basketball back in the mid-60s for Marquette University under the guidance of the coach, the one and only Al McGuire. And you know, I want to quote, in a 1967 Associated Press article, in it described our guest today, Blanton Simmons, as being a young black man who seemingly, at the time, had it all right in front of him. Let's go to the videotape, my friends. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. It went on to say that he was in a position to flee the Negro slums. That's what the article said in 1967. Blanton Simmons, seen here on the right of your screen, living here in Fresno now, but during his college days, no one was better at the pull-up jumper than him. No one. Simmons, who is from Milwaukee, was spotted as a junior at Marquette, but also caught the attention of some at the Wisconsin High School State Basketball Tournament. He was the first person to be recruited by Coach Al McGuire in 1964, and now Simmons is offering his basketball expertise to these high school athletes in the area. It's all part of a club called the Flight Club Basketball Academy. And these are some of the participants who are in that academy. Founded 2 years ago by Ryan Chavez, who along with Simmons' son, train, mentor, and coach 5th through 8th grade students. They teach them the fundamentals of basketball like dribbling, passing, shooting, and I believe defense as well, because we all know defense wins championships, right? During a time when blacks were fighting for civil rights, echoing 2 words, Black Power. Simmons was heavily influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Stokely Carmichael, and Muhammad Ali, known as Cassius Clay back then. Live in our studio right now, I'm pleased to welcome in Blanton Simmons, the founder, or, well, maybe not the founder, but he is certainly a part of Flight Club Basketball Academy. He is here to talk about that, here to talk about basketball, his career, and how he ended up here in the city of Fresno helping so many teenage high school kids with their basketball skills. 436-ME-TV, option 11. We're back with our great program here today with our wonderful guest in just a moment.
Attention all units. We have reports of 2 motorcycle cops protecting
California's highway.
That's for us, good buddy.
The Men of Chips are on MeTV.
Hi, I'm John Baker. I'm John Baker. It's Officer Baker.
He's the blonde one.
Hi there!
Officer Poncherello, man. Frank Poncherello.
Oh, I'm Frank Poncherello.
And he's the one who's Eric Estrada.
There's no way I wouldn't remember a name like that.
Catch the blonde one and the one who's Eric Estrada on
Now
Chips.
on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
Retro TV, your home for classic television. The greatest shows in history are here for you to enjoy. Join Cosby and Colt as secret agent men in I Spy. Ride along the Ponderosa with the Cartwrights in Bonanza. Hit the beat with Joe Friday in Dragnet. And that's not all. Retro TV offers endless fun and excitement for the whole family to enjoy. Retro TV, the best in classic television.
You can find Retro TV on over-the-air channel 13.4.
So, my friends, basketball, one of my all-time favorite sports, doesn't rank quite up there with baseball because baseball is my first love. But if you were to ask me, and I've had many debates about this until I'm blue in the face, and I'm sure our guest has, who's the greatest basketball player that ever lived? In my opinion, in my time, my time watching basketball all these years, it's got to be Michael Jordan. There's nobody that can touch him. You know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was great. Wilt Chamberlain was great. Bill Russell was great. Hey, what about Jerry West, Larry Bird, Elgin Baylor? But nobody could touch Michael Jordan. Would you agree with that, Blanton Simmons?
I enjoy watching Michael play. I enjoyed him a lot. My favorite happens to be LeBron James.
Oh,
and I know that's very current, but time will tell in the long run, and I think he'll end up being the greatest player of all time.
Better than Michael Jordan?
Well, he has
Blanton.
physical gifts that are just so extraordinary that it's hard to compare him with anybody because he's from another planet in terms of his physical gifts. To be as big as he is and as fast as he is and as strong as he is, but also to be the inclusive type player that Magic Johnson was, which is what I love about LeBron James's game. But Michael Jordan, by most people's estimation, is the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. The rap has always been on LeBron James. Yeah, he has the ability. He certainly has all the skills and maybe the best player on the planet. But is he willing, or does he shy away from game pressure when the game is on the line?
I think that rap comes from the fact that everybody remembers how Michael took a lot of last shots. LeBron is more like Magic in that he likes to pass the ball and likes to have other people end up completing the play more often than not, which I think if I had to choose who I would rather play with, it would be a person like Magic Johnson or LeBron James because they really share the ball and allow other people to shine. But Michael Jordan, again, according to most people, is the greatest player of all time.
It's because he took control and he didn't share the ball toward the end of the game. He wanted the ball because he wanted to win the game, basically.
Very true. Very true.
You know, and LeBron has a different mentality than Michael Jordan.
I agree. And it's more, again, to share the ball and have other people be more included in the whole overall attack.
Yeah. Hey, I want to talk about Blanton Simmons. So how would you have fared against Michael?
Nobody would fare very well against Michael Jordan. It's a different era.
Yeah,
I had special things that I could do. My jump shot, I would hold up against most people.
Speaking of which, we got some videotape of your pull-up jumper, that old-time footage of Blanton Simmons. I want you to look at the videotape at home, ladies and gentlemen, and you are number 21, I believe?
Yes.
All right, explain what you're jumping.
This is a pull-up jump shot from about 18 feet off the dribble on the left-hand side of the court.
Mm-hmm.
This is the opening tap of a game. It happens to be when I was 17 years old as a high school student, and this is what basically earned me 75 scholarship opportunities coming out of high school.
You were 17 years old here?
This is 17 years old, Wisconsin State Tournament. I'm a 6'5" guard shooting off the dribble at 17 years old.
Wow, that pull-up jumper, almost impossible to stop because of the quickness in which it happens right here, the dribble, and then boom, the pull-up shot right there. Can't stop that. I mean, that's impossible to stop. Well, I don't care who it is.
That's what I was known for, and it's like I said, I still think it's relatively current with what's happening today. If you look at the release point and the ability to stop on a dime and just shoot the ball.
Yeah, you're not thinking about it. You're just stopping and shooting. Boom. Does Curry do that? The guy that
Curry does it, and Curry's one of the greatest shooters I've ever seen. Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Kobe Bryant, of course, Michael. Those are the guys that I consider great shooters. Reggie Miller, Ray Allen is one of my favorites. So those are great shooters.
But in this day and age, I mean, nobody could do it like you did back then. There's no question. So what year was this? Like 1963?
That's 64. That's my senior year in high school.
Okay, 1964.
Seems like 100 years ago, doesn't it?
But well, I don't know. It's a long time ago. But in this day and age, is there a better pull-up jumper coming from anybody other than Curry, from Steph Curry from the Golden State Warriors?
Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, again, those are my favorite shooters, and Ray Allen. But Ray Allen didn't shoot a lot off the dribble. He shoots a lot of standstill jumpers, and that's what most people do. I think that's what sets apart what I do from most jump shooters.
Yeah, and what gave you the confidence to be able to shoot that pull-up? 10,000
hours. By the time I was 17 years old, I had played 10,000 hours of basketball. My father died when I was 4 years old.
Oh, goodness.
At the age of 7, pedophiles weren't as prevalent as they are today. Kids didn't have guns. My mother had to work, and she told me to go to the playground every day, but you can't leave. I never left the playground for 10 years. From 7 to 17, I spent all of my summer days, the entire day on the playground.
You were lucky you had the height, though. You're 6'5". Just a natural talent for basketball. I want to put up some still photos of you. Some old-time photos here, not too long ago. I mean, only a couple of years ago, right? You're playing at Marquette right there?
That's a Marquette picture with me posting up a smaller guard, again, because I was huge for a guard in that day. I'm a 6'5" player who was playing in the backcourt, actually playing the 1 and the 2 position. And because of my agility, I was often guarded by players who were 5 and 6 inches shorter than I am. And it allowed me to back them down into the post.
Yeah, and there you are here. Do you know what player is trying to defend you?
This is, his name is Brian Ferguson from Northern Michigan University. This happens to have been the best game that I played at Marquette. This is my sophomore year. It's a game where I had 30 points, 15 assists, and 11 rebounds. And you can see the size differential between me and a guard that's trying to guard me.
Yeah, obviously. He's what, about 6'2"? Maybe?
About 6'1" or 2", yes.
Yeah, and here you are again taking that that famous pull-up jumper, or that comfortable position for you, that pull-up jumper.
Right, this is on the run, off the dribble, and it's in the middle of a game. You can see the fellow next to me is actually running, so that's not a standstill shot. That's on the move and then stopping on a spot and just bouncing.
How high, I got to take a break, but how high off the ground are you when you take that jump shot?
I'm basically shooting even with the rim, because that's about as high as I have to jump to dunk a ball, as high as I am there. So when I'm shooting jump shots, I'm at 10 foot.
You're at 10 feet or just a little bit above.
Yes.
Yeah, incredible. All right, we're going to talk about the, the Flight Club Basketball Academy, of course, involving all those kids anywhere from 5th to 8th grade, and then you got the high schoolers too. So you got 2 different divisions. Bland's going to talk about that. He'll talk about Al McGuire, and we're going to come back here on the show. 436-MeTV option 11. We've got an open line if you want to call in. Today is the world of sports. We're having fun here on the show. Connect with me on MeTV Fresno.
When you're looking for KitchenAid innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, will help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified KitchenAid appliances save you energy and money, and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Tune in to Heartland for the best in true country music. Relive vintage specials, one-of-a-kind concerts, and country music's earliest videos. Heartland is the heart of country. The only place where you can find country music, country stars, and country lifestyles 24/7. Heartland, the heart of country.
Now on channel 13.2.
Back here on the program talking to Blanton Simmons, a former college basketball player at Marquette. And why is this so significant? I think it's significant because, well, you played there, first of all. That's significant. And the second reason is, you know, all of the attention and publicity that came out of Marquette due to their coach. And I want to put his picture up on the screen, the one and only Al McGuire. He won the national title there one of those years, not the year, any of the years that you were there, but I believe in the late 70s.
1977.
1977 is when Marquette won the national title under the guidance of Al McGuire, a Hall of Fame basketball coach. Tell us a little bit about him. What was it like to play for him? You were his first recruit, by the way. We have a phone call, so pick up on that in a moment. Good morning, caller. You're on the air with Blanton Simmons, who played for that man right there, Al McGuire. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach, let me ask you a question. As you were coming up in the ranks before you know, and you were a young man anyway, getting out of high school, who's the person that changed your style, or you had your own style, but coming up, let's say high school, who's the coach that really made you who you were? And do you think your coach at Marquette was the best college coach, or who was it in your opinion?
Well, coming up, my mentor and the biggest influence in my life was my high school coach, a man by the name of Vic Anderson, who was a Carlson's Raider in the U.S. Marines. He was a great man. He's in the Wisconsin Hall of Fame. His lifetime basketball record for high school, he coached 11 years. His record was 248 wins and 28 losses.
Wow.
And he was a special man. He has he mentored so many young men who have gone on to do great things in the state of Wisconsin and around the country. And our high school team did something that I don't think has been done very many times around the country before or since that time. We actually had 7 young men from my senior year who got full ride scholarships. The 5 starters, 2 guys graduated at mid-year in January. Back then they had mid-year graduation at some high schools. And the 2 fellows who took their place ended up getting full rides to smaller schools. But I ended up going to Marquette University. I had a teammate who played for the Air Force Academy. His name is James Love. My best friend, Wayne Barry, played for the University of Minnesota. Esthesio Ford played for Utah State. Another player of ours who had the same name, coincidentally, as one of the heavyweight champions, his name was Larry Holmes. He was a little fellow, though, and he played for Drake University. Tommy Martin played for Texas Southern, and Clarence Young played for Carroll College, a small college in Wisconsin. So this is all from 1 year.
Larry Holmes played basketball?
This is the same name.
Larry Holmes?
No.
Oh, okay.
Same name as the heavyweight champion, but a very, very little fellow.
Okay, a very small guy. Not the Larry Holmes.
Not the Larry Holmes.
Another Larry Holmes.
Right.
Okay,
right.
I want to. Okay, as a young black man, I read the article that you sent me from 1967 Associated Press, and referring to blacks at that time, not uncommon at that time, referring to them as Negroes. Okay, and I mean that's a term I hadn't heard in a long time, probably since I was a kid. Although we know it exists, and you know the term African American didn't come into play until later on.
That's correct.
So, how were you treated in the basketball circles as a young, talented, intelligent black man who could convey his thoughts in a very intelligent way?
Well, to some people it was threatening because we were oftentimes supposed to be seen and not heard too much. And I still remember first going off to college and going to the barbershop a couple of months before I started attending Marquette University. And the comment that I would most often hear was, "Don't go down there and mess it up for all of us." And that was a lot of weight.
What did that mean?
On a young man. Well, if, you know, we were getting our first opportunities, and
who were you going to mess it up for?
Well, all the other blacks. If you would go down and do something that would be considered uncomfortable or out of line, it was perceived by other people in the neighborhood that you basically had messed it up for everyone else, that no one else would get an opportunity.
You mean if you spoke up?
If you spoke up, if you spoke out of line, if you did anything that was other than just be obedient, basically. I actually had college recruiting letters, one specifically from the University of Arizona, that actually said in the letter, "We have a real good opportunity for a colored boy." And it really is interesting to my daughter, who was born in 1989, my youngest daughter. She finds it hilarious that that kind of terminology and that kind of attitude was pretty prevalent at that time.
Well, I'm sure your daughter's a very intelligent person and has read up on her history back in the 50s and 60s, and that's kind of how it was. Not that it was correct, certainly isn't politically correct today, and but she understands. I'm sure you explained to her the time period. I mean, you started playing at Marquette before the Civil Rights Act was even signed by Lyndon Johnson.
That's correct, and as I'm writing my story now, that's one of the things that I'm trying to convey to people. All of the changes, and I don't feel like an old man, but I guess I'm becoming one. I'll be 69 years old this year, and to have seen all the changes that I saw, being born actually 6 months before Jackie Robinson was allowed to play baseball, and 2 years before President Truman signed an order integrating the armed forces for the first time in 1948. So I saw a lot of changes in my life.
You know, it's interesting. Back in my sportscasting days, I had a chance, and I was very, very blessed and very fortunate. I was able to cover a lot of major league sports, football, baseball, basketball, and had a chance to cover the Oakland A's for quite some time, and saw one of the greatest Hall of Fame players ever, Reggie Jackson, play. And I recently saw Reggie Jackson, within the last year or so, interviewed by Bill O'Reilly on Fox News, and talking about just the racial discrimination that he experienced before and during the time that he came into the major leagues, playing for the A's. As a minor leaguer, he wasn't allowed in certain hotels, in certain restaurants, and this was like in the mid-60s.
Well, we actually had an incident in South Carolina. We went down to South Carolina to play a game my junior year, and we had a player on our team named Joe Thomas, who was from Canton, Georgia, and he warned us after seeing how a certain waitress was treating us that, you know, something might happen in that particular hotel at breakfast. And true to form, a few minutes later, she spilled coffee on him.
Is that right?
And it didn't seem like it was unintentional, and he got up screaming and was really, really upset and had to be restrained. But that kind of stuff was happening still in the 60s.
Yeah, and to hear Reggie Jackson, Hall of Fame player, talk about discrimination and what he faced, you know, I had never heard him talk about it, but very interesting. But you faced similar opposition in your time?
Well, part of what happened in the article that you referred to in the mid-1960s, and again, this is hard for people to visualize now because things have changed for the better to a great extent. We were still having open housing marches in 1966 and 67, people actually marching for the right to live in specific neighborhoods in a city like Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is considerably north. It's on Lake Michigan.
Yeah. Now, don't forget, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated when you were a senior at Marquette. Is that right?
On April 4th, 1968, my senior year. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. We're going to come back, talk more with Blanton Simmons, and of course, we'll talk about the Flight Club Basketball Academy that takes place right here in the city of Fresno. Blanton is over there offering his expertise on shooting, dribbling, whatever the case may be in terms of basketball. 436-MeTV, option 11. Call in, weigh in, ask your question. Back in a moment.
The Ballad of Andy and Barney. Andy and Barney were lawmen, bravest you ever did see. Warned every crook in the record book to stay out of Mayberry. They were the law.
Yes, they were the law, and they didn't know fear.
The Andy Griffith Show.
I guess to sum it up, you could say there's 3 reasons why there's so little crime in Mayberry. There's Andy, and there's me, and baby makes 3.
Now on MeTV Fresno.
You can find movies on over-the-air channel 13.3. Movies. Our name says it all.
Back here on the program on Connect with Me today, and we're talking about, I guess we're talking about racial equality. We're talking about what happened in the 60s, specifically to you and some other people. And, I want to get back to the caller that called in today, and we answered the first part of his question, but the second part was who influenced your style, your shot, what coach influenced you there?
Well, I actually just played so much that I learned to shoot a basketball and to shoot the way that I shoot on my own. But I did watch late night TV, which is when you would see NBA once in a while. And my favorite player probably was to watch Jerry West, because he had a style where he did come off the bounce, shooting on the run a lot. Oscar Robertson was probably the greatest player when I was young, Oscar Robertson and Elgin Baylor. But Oscar was 6'5", 230, and exceptionally strong, and had more of a game that was more fundamentally sound as opposed to flashy.
But he had more of a traditional style. And we got a phone call here coming in where Elgin Baylor and Jerry West had more of a, what shall I say?
A flair.
A flair to them, yes, a big flair.
Absolutely.
Caller, you're on with Blanton Simmons. Go ahead.
Yes, I thank you very much for coming on the show. One thing that I don't hear enough about, because I am white, of approximate the same age as you, I understand what you've gone through, and I want to help, but give a black perspective of how black people might be able to help black people. I know how I can. How can your do anything?
I appreciate that question. I think it's really important. One of the things that we stress at Flight Club, and I think that a disservice is done oftentimes in the black community when we have young coaches or aspiring coaches who emphasize basketball and sports only without really giving enough energy and enough emphasis to the academic component. At Flight Club Basketball Academy, we founded the academy on 4 basic principles. 1, exceptional individual personalized training, which we do. But secondly, we insist that each of the young men that we deal with aspire to at least have a 3.0 grade point average. That's the minimum. We expect more because realistically, they're fooling themselves if they think they're going to go to college and play basketball, but they aren't doing their schoolwork and taking care of their academics.
So what are you actually saying? To be a part of this Flight Club Basketball Academy, you have to carry a certain grade point average?
You have to aspire to a 3.0. We will accept a youngster basically with any grade point when they first come in, but at the end of their first full semester with us, we insist that they have a 3.0. And it's rather amazing when you set standards high, the kids will reach and they'll get there because it's the carrot. They want to play basketball, and we make sure that they have at least a 3.0 grade point average. They show us their report cards.
I want to get into that in a moment, but I want to ask you, stay on the racial thing for a moment, because I've covered sports all my life, professional sports. And the one thing that I have learned, and I thought about this just a few years ago, and even this past summer with all the racial tension going on in Ferguson and in New York, you know, I have seen and covered professional sports since 1974, okay? Why is it that in baseball, football, basketball, you have all these players that come together from all different kinds of races, different cultures, different religions, they all play the same game together, and there are virtually no problems. They love each other, they respect each other, they protect each other. They are, in some cases, best friends on and off the field. Different races and religions getting along and playing a game, yet in the world today, and in the world back then, we can't get along as a society. Black, white, Hispanic, yellow, Asian.
That's the beauty of sports.
But why is it we can't get along outside the realm of sports?
I wish I could answer that, and I'm searching for an answer every day myself, because we saw all of the advances that were made through legislation in the 60s, and in the article that I submitted to you before we had the show, I was 20 years old and I understood that legislation was not going to be the answer to the problem. You have to have people in their consciousness be willing to accept each other and to look at each other as the same, look at our similarities rather than our differences. Why can
professional athletes do that and we as a society can't do that?
I think because winning becomes paramount, and you want people who can help you win the game. And oftentimes these relationships are forged and they're very strong within the boundaries of the sport itself. And then oftentimes people go their own ways after the games. Once in a while you have friends that develop, that actually do things off the court with each other. But I had people I played with who I wasn't necessarily best friends with, but we had a common goal, and we pulled together to try and win games. That was the whole purpose of our being together as a team.
And in this day and age, you have, and I'm gonna focus on baseball for a moment, but baseball, you have players that are coming in from out of the country. You have players from Cuba, South America, Japan. So not only do you have different race, creed, color, you have foreign players coming in and getting along. Players that can't even, like Yasiel Puig, for example, of the Dodgers, can't even speak English, yet he's a part of the team. They're getting along. We got a call coming in, and yet in our society today, as politicians, they can't get along in Washington, and there's all this racial tension across the country. Caller, go ahead, chime in.
Yes, good morning to you and your guest. And first, I want to say that is one hell of a jump shot, sir. That is amazing. And second of all, I'm a musician, but I'm also very involved in sports. At my local school here at Pacific Union, I've been away for some time. They recently cut sports, and it's just such a tragedy. I want to get your opinion on, how sports can affect kids with their grades and going through the elementary levels, because they already cut music, and now they're cutting sports, and it seems like we're just spiraling down. And it's good to have people like you mentoring these kids with good morals, ethics, and I just appreciate it, man.
Well, thank you very much. It's very important that we keep the extracurriculars at school, but I do think that they do need to be tied into academics, and we need to hold kids to a high standard in order to participate. When we do that, I think we enrich our society as a whole, because once again, youngsters will aspire to whatever standards you set for them. And if you set the bar low, they won't go very far. If you set it high and allow them to use that as the carrot to participate in sports or other extracurriculars, it just does them a world of good in the long run, and you set good habits very early.
Got to take a break. We're going to continue with Blanton Simmons, and your phone calls and the conversation will show we have a lot of video of these kids playing. We'll talk about that and a little bit more about Al McGuire before we get into the main thrust of this program today. Back in just a moment. 436 Meet TV, option 11.
When you're looking for Whirlpool innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified Whirlpool appliances save you energy and money, and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Watch Dr. TV on over-the-air channel 13.9.
Back here on the show with Blanton Simmons, of course, and we're going to get to the Flight Club Basketball Academy in just a moment, but I want to talk about a couple of different things before I get there, because we have a lot of videotape to show here. First of all, Al McGuire, your former coach, what made him such a great basketball coach?
He was the greatest recruiter I've ever seen. He was a tremendous salesman. I remember, and it's something I've used in my life. I try not to use it to be manipulative, but it's something I've used in my life. When I met Al McGuire, he was just signed as the coach at Marquette University in March of 1964, shortly after the tape that you showed, which was the state tournament, which was the same month. He was the new head coach. He came to North Division High School, which was my high school, to recruit me, took me to lunch, and right away honed in on the fact that I had teeth that were broken when I was a youngster, and I had silver caps on them, and stainless steel caps, and he told me that Marquette had a great dental school, and I knew that my mother really couldn't afford to get my teeth fixed the way I wanted to get them done. But he didn't ask me to sign with Marquette. This is a wonderful tool as a salesman, and what he said is, I'm not going to ask you to sign because I don't really know you that well, but what I want you to promise to do before you sign with anybody else, promise you'll call me. And that was a minor commitment to me. So he got me to commit to a minor point rather than trying to ask for the whole enchilada at one time. And to get someone to commit to a minor point, you basically have put yourself in sync with them, and you have a relationship, because at that point I had made a commitment to him, even though it wasn't the ultimate commitment to go to Marquette at that point. But I promised that I would call him before I would sign with anybody else.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did he woo you?
Well,
did you call him?
I called him, and
so you kept your part of the bargain.
I kept my part of the bargain, and we went on. I went on to have a really interesting freshman year. My freshman year at Marquette.
But how did he get you to sign on that dotted line after you called him?
Well, I had a reason for staying in town. As I talk about in my story, I mentioned earlier that my father died when I was 4 years old. I was 4, but my sister was 10. My brother was 12, and my sister had a lot of trouble with my father's death, as you might imagine, being a 4th grader and having your father, who was 40 years old, die suddenly. She suffered tremendously from paranoia and schizophrenia, and a couple times during my high school years actually had tried to commit suicide. And I couldn't bear to leave my mother behind and go to some far-off city to go live and to play, so I stayed in my hometown.
Yeah, okay. So you got there, and he was a big influence on your life, I would imagine, just like he was on many of those players who played under him, I would imagine.
The experience was very influential in my life. I got a chance, because of my ability to play basketball, to attend a university that was, the cost for tuition, books, room, and board was 10 times my mother's annual salary for 1 year of school at Marquette University.
Boy. How did Dr. Martin Luther King and Stokely Carmichael and Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay at that time, influence you? Because that was during the Civil Rights Movement. The two words echoed across the country: Black Power. You know about the Black Panthers. You know about the two Olympians in the 1968 Olympic Games that summer in Mexico City, holding up with the black gloves, Black Power on the gold medal stand. It was a turbulent time. So how did these three individuals influence Blanton Simmons?
Well, what needs to be said, I guess, is that as a 9-year-old boy in 1955, well before any of that, I witnessed, by picking up a Jet magazine one morning out of our mailbox, and Emmett Till, a young black boy from Chicago, 14 years old, who had been murdered in Mississippi. And that was like shocking to me, that he was murdered for supposedly flirting with a white woman. And then 5 months later, Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus in 1955 in December. Those were really monumental occurrences in my life with reference to who I was and how I was being perceived as a black man, or a young colored boy, as I was called at that time. And then in 1963, Martin Luther King marched on Washington. In 1964, voters' rights legislation was signed by Lyndon Johnson. And then those 4 years, from 64 through 68, when I was matriculating at Marquette University, that's when all the social upheaval and all the revolution, the cultural changes were happening. So it was very, very influential to see people like Dr. King really fight for civil rights, and then to have an alternative person like Stokely Carmichael, who was a lot more forceful, come on the scene, and to basically insist that our rights were thought of as important. And
Cassius Clay refusing to go into the armed services based on the fact he disagreed with the Vietnam War. That was another influence on you.
That was 1967, and he refused, and I believe it was May of 1967, and coincidentally, we as a team, all the players on Marquette, had met him in March of 1967. We played in the National Invitational Tournament in New York City, and we went to practice one day prior to the tournament starting. We went through the basement, and Muhammad Ali was sparring down in the basement. And then he came up after
where was this?
This is in Madison Square Garden in New York City.
Really? And he was just sparring down below?
He was preparing for what would be his last fight before they took his title. He was going to fight Zora Foley, in April of 1967. And we met him, and then in May, after the Zora Foley fight, his title was taken from him.
Got to take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we'll get to Flight Club Basketball Academy. Blanton Simmons, the guest, 436-MeTV option 11. Hey, this guy's a basketball legend, but also now in his life, he is a mentor to young kids. We're back in just a moment.
It's almost time.
Now we'll find out once and for all about Clark Kent and Superman.
Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's a TV show.
Yes, but who is he? What's his name?
He's Superman.
Golly, Clark, won't that be wonderful seeing Superman?
Fighting a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and television the MeTV way.
No one can do the things that Superman does.
The adventures of Superman.
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
Euronews, most-watched news channel in Europe.
Back here on the program with Blanton Simmons, I want to get to the videotape and let's roll it, and we'll talk about the Flight Club Basketball Academy. What is that exactly, you say? Well, I'm going to turn to our guest, and he can answer the question as you take a look at the videotape of these kids working out here in the city of Fresno. Blanton, how did this all come about? You're not the founder of this club, are you?
No, Ryan Chavez is the founder.
Okay.
And he, along with my son, Evan Simmons, they mentor young boys 5th through 8th grade, and you see a shot of both of them on the screen now. My son is the big guy on the left.
Okay.
And Ryan is the fellow.
There he is, right there.
That's
right?
Ryan. That's Ryan. My son is a little bigger than him. You'll see him in a second. They were doing this before I actually got to Fresno. They were mentoring boys 5th through 8th grade. And as I was writing my biography, I realized that I needed to have a quality in it that spoke to other people and had a redemptive quality that would be meaningful to people other than myself. And in August of 2013, I founded Flight Club Basketball Academy, which I put above their flight club as a place for the young guys who are 5th to 8th grade to aspire to become part of as they became high school students. But it was my idea to make sure that we included the components of academic excellence, again, insisting on a 3.0 grade point average minimum once you became part of the club, and to bring in a nutritional component, recognizing that these youngsters needed to figure out about eating protein instead of eating junk food so they could build their bodies. And then the fourth thing, so the first thing is accelerated personalized basketball training, then the academic component, the third thing being nutritional awareness, and then the fourth thing is that I wanted to make sure that they had some sort of cultural exposure before they went off to college, because I had some experiences my freshman year having come from an inner city. I went to high school that had 1,100 students, 1099 of them were black.
Wow.
So basically a segregated school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So my whole experience had been an inner city experience. And I went from that experience at 17 years old to kind of a culturally shocking experience to be on a campus with 12,000 students, maybe a dozen of which were black.
Where are these kids from?
The kids in the video there are from all over Fresno, as far as the west side, all the way into Clovis.
That's your son there,
That's
right?
my son, yes, that's Evan right there.
He's bigger than you.
He's about 6'5", 350, and he has like a 60-inch chest. He's a big, big man.
He's a big man. But now there are two different levels to this flight club, right? There's 5th
through 8th.
Through 8th, and then the next level jumps up to high school?
High school kids who actually, we take kids who are already excelling at the high school level, and I try to prepare them to be able to convert their skills, parlay their skills, if you will, into some sort of a college assistance in terms of scholarship money, whether it be a Division I, II, III, NAIA, junior college, but just encouraging these youngsters to use their skills to help them pay for their college education.
Is that right? And do you mentor the high school kids?
Yes, I do.
You do. And what do you tell them besides, I mean, besides the obvious, you said they have to hold a 3.0 grade point average
after their first full year
with the Flight Academy. What is it besides the obvious that you teach them? Do you teach them specific basketball fundamental skills?
Very definitely, we teach them basketball skills, but we try and teach them life skills as well. The thing that I felt served me most, coming from a very respectable family in the inner city, is to stand up straight, speak clearly, enunciate when you talk, shake people's hands firmly, look them in the eye. And these are all things that we dwell on and we really, really emphasize to the kids.
That's hard to do for some kids. Like my son, he's very introverted and shy, and he, to sit there and shake someone's hand, look at them firmly in the eye and say, hello, I'm so-and-so, that can be a very intimidating experience for some young kids.
Well, we work on it with them and explain to them that what you're saying doesn't really mean anything if people can't understand it. So it's very important to articulate your thoughts, and that your thoughts are important. And one of the ways to do that is to listen when they talk and not cut them short, and to make sure that they get a chance to fully express themselves. And we emphasize that and make sure that youngsters understand that we feel what they're saying has value and importance.
Does the fact that these kids, obviously, they're still in their growing stages. I know you talked about nutrition, but the fact of the matter is, not every child on that basketball court has the necessary skills to play basketball. They don't have the natural talent, say, that you did. You spent thousands of hours on the basketball court as a kid, and maybe some of these kids will too. But how do you deal with a kid that isn't going to have the same talent as you did as a kid?
We recognize that most of them aren't going to go to college to play basketball. But if we can use basketball right now while they're still young enough to believe that maybe they have a chance to do that, if we can use that to incentivize them to actually do their schoolwork, then we've won. And we get a lot of kudos from parents who marvel at the fact that we're getting their kids to take an interest in school because they want to play on Flight Club Basketball Academy.
Are there one or two that stand out, though, that you kind of, you take your son aside and say, hey, that kid's really going to be good. He's going to go to college and play ball?
We have a few of them. There are a few youngsters who we think will do that, but one of the things that's kind of tricky about that is that when they're this age, you don't know which ones are really going to grow. And I remember when I was a youngster having guys who I thought were extremely big when I was 11, 12 years old, and I met them several years later and I was looking down at them. So oftentimes you have youngsters who mature early and you think they're going to be world beaters because they're the strongest, biggest kid in the 6th or 7th grade. Oftentimes that's because that's as big as they're going to get and they're really fully mature. So we encourage the ones who are a little smaller not to get down on themselves and think that they don't have a chance, because you just don't know how it's going to turn out in the long run. I was not very good in the 6th or 7th grade. Matter of fact, I think I was ridiculed more than I was revered.
Is that right? Wow. And the attitudes of these kids, are they any different than kids were back in your day?
One of the things that really bothers me is the use of the N-word and the swearing that a lot of adults just seem to allow youngsters to get by with, and we don't allow it. We let them know that's forbidden. We don't do that.
You've heard them use those words on the court?
We hear kids do it all the time, and unfortunately it's too big of a part of our culture now. It's part of their music, and it's just become so acceptable that we just don't allow it.
Yeah, and do you talk to them about it?
Frequently.
And do they listen?
Well, we make sure they listen.
Yeah, okay. All right, Blanton Simmons is here. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Coach, a real quick question. If you have a couple of ball players in high school, do you think that you think are going to make it in the college level, and then how do you tell those kids that, let's say the colleges offer them this and that, to come to their school? Do you try to tell these kids that it's not the right thing to do? Because there are a lot of outstanding players, but they go to colleges because they just want to make the money, or they would just want to make, a name for themselves. So what do you do to teach these kids?
Well, what I try to do is make sure that they understand that the lasting thing that they're going to get out of playing basketball, if they're smart, is an education. This will last them far longer than the opportunity to play basketball. The basketball is the fun part, and it's the part that all of them look at, and they think that they're going to be young forever like I did when I was a young man. But as we know, Father Time is undefeated. We all get old, and if we're lucky, and that they need to really pay special attention to their education and to select their friends well, because when you go to college, you get an opportunity to rub shoulders with a lot of people from different backgrounds, and you really get a chance to enhance the kind of person that you're going to be and what your life's connections will be, alumni associations and so forth, and these will be invaluable experiences that will enhance your life forever.
Yeah, if you choose your friends correctly, that'll say a lot about your future. Am I right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the proudest thing about my children. They always brought home good people.
Yeah. Okay. Blanton Simmons is here. We're talking about Flight Club Basketball Academy, formed only a couple of years ago here in the city of Fresno, and Blanton is fairly new to the city, so we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. You're welcome to call in 436-MeTV, option 11. Back in a moment.
Frigidaire. It means the first refrigerator. It means a history of innovations that help make your home life better. And now we introduce the new Frigidaire French door refrigerator with over 100 ways to organize for maximum flexibility. Built with adjustable flip-up and slide-under shelving and stackable crisper drawers. It's the refrigerator that flexes to fit it all, no matter what your day will bring. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Back here on the show, Blanton Simmons, he is our guest, talking about Flight Club Basketball Academy. Easy for me to say, right? Flight Club Basketball Academy. And so, but I guess getting back to my other question about what's different about kids today than back in your day. I mean, kids today are so focused on their electronics, their cell phones, their computers. Do you find that maybe these kids today are a little more distracted than they were back in your day?
Absolutely. We played all day long. That's what we did. We went outside, and I didn't come in until the day was done, and I went back out to play under the lights at night.
That's what I did. I left during the summer, not during school hours, but well, I cut school a few times, nothing major. But during the summertime, I left it after breakfast and came home for dinner.
That's correct, and we just played all day long, and you didn't even know you were in shape. You got in shape just because you were outside playing all the time.
We knew nothing about getting into shape. We were just into shape because we were always active.
That's
right?
Correct. That's correct. And you very seldom saw kids who were overweight, and it's disturbing to see people selling sodas that are 64 ounces or 32 ounces. Back when we were kids, a soda was 7 ounces. It was a little bottle of Coca-Cola. It was a treat. It wasn't a meal.
That's true. So you do see a difference between today's kids and the kids that you hung out with.
Well, they have so many more things that we didn't have. The video games and all of the online stuff where they're playing virtually instead of playing in reality. Because I abhor those particular games, because I see them as time wasters, I literally have never played a video game, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, any of that stuff that came out in the 90s. I've never done it. I just refuse to do it.
Yeah, I did a little bit of it, but not that much. I'm not into video games. Of course, my kids are, and every kid on the planet, including these kids here, are into these video games. But, I really don't see any overweight kids here on this basketball court. Well, I don't even see a one here that's really got a weight problem.
No, you don't see them here at Flight Club, but if you walk down the street, they're not hard to find.
No, and in part is it because they're coming to Flight Club and they're taking part?
Well, we're working them out, and we encourage them to work out on their own all the time. We really do. I was marveling the other day at the fact it's quite remarkable that in 1985, when Refrigerator Perry was playing for the Chicago Bears, he was the first guy who weighs 300 pounds. Now it's not uncommon to see people walking down the street of both genders weighing 300 pounds.
Including pro athletes.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
300 pounds plus.
Yeah.
I mean, the average size now for any offensive lineman is what, 350, 375?
Every college has a plethora of men that are
well over 300.
Yeah.
Well over 300.
That was an anomaly in 1985.
Yeah, I mean, Refrigerator Perry, he was even a running back at one time.
He
part-time
carried the ball.
He carried the ball inside the 5-yard line. He was the ball carrier.
That's
yeah,
correct.
you remember that?
Yes.
Mike Ditka? All right, and so what life skills do you teach these kids? You kind of touched on it a little bit during this interview, but I want to know what kind of life skills you try to teach them. What do you tell them the tools they need to be successful, forget about basketball, but in life in general?
Well, I think the biggest component, if you want respect, you have to be respectful. So to be respectful to people in positions of authority, to be kind, to treat people like you want to be treated. You know, it's like the golden rule. But to be kind, kindness doesn't cost you anything, and it will serve you well no matter what, and people are responsive to it. And to try to consider the value of every person by learning people's names, calling people by their name. I make a habit of doing that. I try and memorize everybody's name I meet and to treat them with respect, because in turn you get respect when you act that way.
Yeah, and what are you teaching them in terms of nutrition?
Well, again, the importance of protein, making sure that they have enough protein in their diet, because protein is what builds lean muscle. Most of the kids and most people enjoy carbohydrates so much, but carbohydrates turn to sugar, and which turns to fat. So you really need to make sure that your diet has enough protein in it. And again, whatever you need to do, whether it's protein supplements or choosing the parts of the meal that you enjoy most, developing a taste for protein and making sure that you get enough of it in your diet.
Where do we go from here? This thing is what, 2 years old. Do you have any plans? I know you're in the process of writing a book as well. Talk about that.
Yeah, my book, I started writing it in July of 2011, and I'm nearing completion. I plan to have it done by the middle of this year, by the end of June.
And what's the book about?
Well, it's about my life and my path as a young black man, and seeing the evolution of the whole civil rights movement, and actually comparing it to what's transpired since I've become an older man, and seeing the things that still seem to be prevalent that we thought we were dealing with way back in the 60s and 70s, but also looking at the progress that's been made and trying to get the youngsters who have all of these opportunities to avail themselves of these opportunities, and to understand that all that we've gone through, people who preceded them have gone through to make these opportunities available to them.
All right, Blanton, I'm going to throw a little criticism at you here. Do you mind?
Not at all.
Okay, I don't see, okay, maybe I'm blind, but, and yes, I do need a new pair of glasses, but do I see any girls here on the court?
Oh, yes, there's one right there with the blue on.
Okay, that's a girl. Okay, how old is she?
She's 11 years old.
All right, 11, but that's the only one?
No, they're girls that, and we have girls who, there she is, and she happens to be dribbling the ball, just as you say that.
That's right, better than some
She's
boys.
probably going to pull up
there
and
it
make,
is.
oh, she missed it. But so yes, there are girls, and girls are welcome in Flight Club. We're trying to develop character through sports, and helping youngsters find themselves and develop a real sense of themselves, and that they can be whatever they want to be, but they have to work at it.
Yeah, and you're fairly new to Fresno. Real quick, tell us how long you've been here.
I got here in December of 2011, so it's been a little bit over 3 years, 3 years and 3 months.
Yeah. Well, we got about 30 seconds left. Hey, listen, it's an honor to meet you, sir.
Well, my
pleasure. It really is.
It's
a pleasure, and a pleasure to talk to you, somebody from your experience and background and knowledge, and really great to see you. Hope you come back, Blanton.
Thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. Blanton Simmons, one of the good guys here in Fresno, trying to mentor young kids into the future. We're going to be back tomorrow with another edition of Connect with Me. We'll talk about identity theft tomorrow and the Better Business Bureau. Some of the people from that organization will be here tomorrow to talk about protecting your identity. See you tomorrow. Have a great day.